Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Rabbi Stephen here. Hope you're having a great week and you enjoy your day of rest. First of all, shout out to all the young people who participated and led our recent family service on Friday. Shout out goes to Lily, who showed up, who's one of our alumni, just had her bat mitzvah last year. Thank you for participating. Also Grace, she's new to the synagogue, and she just kind of stepped in because a couple of people weren't there. And also Hunter, young guy Hunter, what are you, about 7, getting up there and reading, awesome. And of course the rest of my class, Ian and Lauren, who brought her guitar so she could work with her dad, Glenn, with his bass guitar, and it was just wonderful. And all the rest of the kids that came up and participated in the service. And please, if I've left you out, I'm trying to remember. Oh, how could I forget my good buddy Josh with his trombone, who's always there, working and helping out. And, great work, guys. Great work. You are our future. And from the looks of things, Judaism is going to continue for many generations, thanks to all of you, and thanks to the classes that came up and participated. It was wonderful. Saturday morning, we had almost a million. We had 8 people helping out one of our congregants observe a yahrzeit. And, as much as I go on about having a minyan, which is great, there's more and more people starting to show up on a Saturday, which is great. Saturday is, in conservative Judaism, that is our main service. That is when we take out the Torah. That is when we do specific blessings. Very important that you come. I mean, this is who we are, the Torah. It tells us who we are, and it's every week is a study of our Torah, the teaching of Hashem, talking about His laws, talking about how we behave, how we act as a holy people. God chose us. We chose God. We said we will do and we will hear. It wasn't just one-sided. So, this week's portion is Tetzaveh. Tetzaveh, you will be holy. And it talks about the consecration of the priests. It is also Shabbat Zachar. Zachar means to remember. Who or what are we remembering? We're remembering the Amalekites. As the train of Israelites passed through the wilderness, the Amalekites would hide out in the hills, and as the train passed by, they would attack the rear, which is where a lot of the women and children were. Now, it's very important to understand that there was no provocation. We were not invading their land. We were not attacking them. All we were doing was passing through the wilderness based on Hashem's instructions and His map, telling us where to go and when to move, when to camp. The Amalekites were not involved, yet they were the grandson. Amalek was the grandson of Esau. They were sort of our foe, and they attacked without provocation. Therefore, we need to remember them. We were given the instructions to wipe them out. They were an enemy. Now, it sounds a little brutal, maybe in our day that we would, drive a people to extinction. But these people were horrible. They preyed on the weakest people of the trail of the Israelites. So, and it is a positive commandment. It is a positive commandment to remember Amalek and the Amalekites. This is also a special maftir, which is the last portion, the last few verses of the Torah reading, and is also a special haftorah. It is a positive commandment to remember the Amalekites, and this is also the Shabbat before Purim. Now, what's the connection there? Haman, who was the enemy of the Jews, who drew the lots, hence the Purim. That's what Purim means. It means the lot. It means a lot, to decide which date he would exterminate the Israelites that were in Babylon, that were in Persia. And it was the 15th of Adar that fell, and hence that was the date that was chosen, and that's why Purim is celebrated on that date. But Haman was an Amalekite, right? And they say that, if we had done what we were supposed to do and gotten rid of the Amalekites, fought them, and just got rid of them, then there would have been no Haman, there would not have been a Purim, there would not have needed to be a Purim. See? So that's the connection between Shabbat Zachar and Purim and this particular Shabbat. All right, so in this particular portion, all right, last portion, Teruma, the portion, we had the building of the parts of the sanctuary that would go into making our first temple. This portion addresses the consecration of the priests, the kahuna. Right? People say the big kahuna, right? It's supposed to be a Hawaiian word for the great soul. But actually the word kahuna means priesthood, and it also means to minister. So it focuses on the dressings, the robes, and the various attire of the priest. There was a big turban. There was a little gold, kind of like a crown. It wasn't really a crown. It was kind of a. It fit up here and it was tied around the turban, and it said Kadosh la Hashem, holy to God. They had a inner breeches. There was a robe that went down that was adorned with 72 bells and pomegranates on the bottom, and this was so people knew that the Cohen Gadol was there and he was performing his duties. He had it was called an ephod. It was like a kind of like an apron, and attached to that was a breastplate that had rows, 4 stones, 4 stones, and 4 stones that were identified, that were symbolic of the various tribes. Now the ephod, the breastplate, actually folded in half. Inside they put a parchment that had the holy name of Hashem inside. And this was called the Urim and the Tumim, the Turim. Now Urim means lights, Tumim means completion, and it was sort of a Hebrew idiom that mean perfect lights. And what would happen is when the Kohen Gadol had a question, wanted to communicate with God, with Hashem, he would ask him a question and the lights would light up. Now remember, these lights had the names of the tribes on it, and it was up to the Kohen to divinely determine what the message was from the letters that were lighting up. Sort of a trick, but the high priest had that divine inspiration, so they understood what it was in context to the question, what the answer was going to be. So there was all sorts of procedures and processes with which to ordain the priests, or the holy priest, really. It was the holy priest, the priest Gadol, the head priest, right? The other priests had a little bit of a consecration themselves, and they had robes that they would have as well, right? Certain tunics, and they would wear a cap. They wouldn't necessarily wear the turban, but they would wear a cap, which is reminiscent of our kippah, of our yarmulke. Right? So isn't it interesting, though, think about this, that the first people to be consecrated were the priests. There was no talk of any kingship or rulership because Hashem was our ruler. And the priests were not necessarily distinct from the rest of us. The rest of us, flunky little Israelites, are common people. The high priest and the priests were regular people when they weren't performing their priestly functions, and that was the message. That's why the verbiage in this particular portion says that when the priests wear their garments, they will minister. When they're not, the understanding is when they were not wearing their garments, they were just like anybody else, except they were priests. They were to take on the duties of the priesthood when it became their turn to minister. Right? So the point of this is that everybody is equal in the eyes of Hashem. Nobody is above anybody in terms of being holier, except when they're performing the duties. Or nobody else is special unless they're, in the process of performing the duties, or like the Kohen Gadol is communing with Hashem, to read the stones on the breastplate. We're all equal in the eyes of Hashem, and that's really the important message here. The reason why the priests did what they did is they represented the Israelites. Everybody else was off doing their thing, raising families. Of course, the priesthoods also had families. They raised families. There's no celibacy in Judaism. In fact, it's a commandment, not just a mitzvah, l'dor v'dor, to raise a family. That's what we do. We want to, continue with the line of Judaism, with the line of the Israelites. But the common people, the rest of us, would be off doing our regular jobs, either farming or shepherding or doing whatever. The job of the Levites, and specifically the Kohens, which was a subset of the Levites, their job was to minister to the people. Now, what does that mean? It means they represent God. Right? Just like in Congress, we have a House of Representatives and we have Senate. Right? Their job is to be servants of the people. Right? This is not, we're not going to get into a political discussion here. That's the purpose, and that was the purpose of the priests. So in reality, there really was no government per se. Right? The rules, the constitution, if you will, of Judaism is the Torah. It's the teaching of Hashem. We have the negative commandments, which things that we don't do. We have the positive commandments, things that we do, that we are supposed to do. And it was up to the priests to sort of make sure that that continued. And that's why they were specially consecrated. Okay? So, great lesson. This weekend, services, regular garden variety, run-of-the-mill services. Friday night, we'll see at 7. Saturday morning, 9:30. Let's keep going toward that magic number of 10, that minyan. All right? Let's see if we can get a minyan. Let's pull out the Torah. Let's read it. Let's learn. Okay? Hope to see you there. In the meantime, Shabbat Shalom. Happy Purim as it's coming up. And thanks for tuning in.